Today, we're going to consider the German philosopher Martin Heidegger, his phenomenology of things, and its importance for Benso's ethics of things. Now, our way into this topic is going to be through Martin Heidegger's lifelong philosophical preoccupation with the question of the meaning of being. Now, on the surface, this sounds like an intimidating phrase, but it can be made a little bit more simple and concrete with an example. So consider the following statements I'm about to give you, all of which use some form of the verb to be. This is a camera. I am a person. It is raining outside. I am hungry. It is the 5th of May. It is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. In each of these statements, I use some form of the verb to be to describe these different happenings. The being of the camera, the temperature of the air, my state of hunger. Now, all of these things can surely be said to be, but at the same time, they can't be said to be in quite the same way. Each thing is in its own manner. In each of these happenings, in other words, the relevant way of being differs dramatically. Each phenomenon is, and I'm emphasizing the is, the being of the thing. Each thing is differently. It exists differently. Now, Heidegger's philosophical preoccupation is with this is that we all share, and yet we share it differently. We all are differently, and yet we all are. So it's this philosophical tension that really motivates Heidegger's pursuits. Now, Heidegger thinks that Western philosophy, from Socrates and Plato on down the line, generally neglected this distinction between the fact of a thing's existence and its many different ways of being. One way to think about this would be through, let's say, Nietzsche's category of will to power. This is a topic that Heidegger deals with at length. Nietzsche's idea of will to power, it's up for some interpretive debate, but at a minimum, I think we could say that will to power is a psychological drive that human beings have to engage in activities that are challenging, that pose obstacles and resistances to us, and that we then achieve our ends, we overcome the obstacles, we overcome the resistances to achieve something great. And it's in that achievement of greatness, of overcoming resistance and obstacles, that we feel powerful. And he thinks this drive is sort of at the root of human behavior. Heidegger's point is simply that if Nietzsche is to interpret the entirety of the world on the basis of will to power, then a thing's various modalities of being become covered over. Every being becomes interpreted as a mere instantiation of will to power. This covering over of beings through a static master concept is what Heidegger refers to as the forgetfulness of being. And he sort of casts this criticism over much of the whole of Western philosophy that came before him. Now, especially in the later part of his career, Heidegger focuses on the way that modern technology contributes to our collective forgetfulness of being. He thinks modern technology is one of these sort of meta-concepts like Nietzschean will to power that determines what sort of value and meaning we give to things, and especially the things of nature in this case. Now, Heidegger thinks that modern technology encounters all things, especially natural things like trees, rivers, and forests, as raw material that can be extracted, housed, and accessed at a moment's notice. So the being of natural things for Heidegger has been by and large reduced to technological purposes. Heidegger gives the example of the Rhine River and the different ways in which we can relate to the Rhine River's potentiality for being. He starts by talking about how the construction of a hydroelectric power plant on the Rhine reduces the Rhine's modality of being to that of a resource, to something to be controlled, managed, housed, and accessed. But he argues instead for a different, more artistic way of relating to the being of the Rhine River, and he draws on the poet Friedrich Hölderlin to make his point. He talks about how Hölderlin draws attention to the way that prior to the construction of the hydroelectric power plant, the river was a source of cultural pride, a natural habitat for the animals and the vegetation, It was a place of philosophical and poetic inspiration. Heidegger elaborates on this mode of letting things be by drawing on the etymology of the German word for thing, das Ding. He notes that in its original meaning, Heidegger has a thing for etymology. In its original meaning, das Ding indicates a gathering together of disparate elements in the singular appearance of a thing. And in this gathering together of these disparate elements, in the appearance of the thing, he thinks the thing itself points beyond itself to what he calls the fourfold, which for him is comprised of the sky, earth, mortals, and divinities. And we'll talk a little bit more about what he means by the fourfold in the next couple minutes here. Embedded within Heidegger's thinking on the fourfold is an effort to get us to learn to not be closed off to a thing's distinctive and multifarious ways of being, to the distinctive ways in which a thing can be and is. He wants us to learn not to dominate things, and instead to let things be in their ownmost potentiality for being. This is what Benso at one point refers to as the depth of things. We can begin to get a better sense for what Heidegger means by the appearance of the thing in the fourfold by returning to the Spark Hunter file. Our hero's account of the wine glass over dinner conversation is an especially powerful example of this.
Look, 6 glasses. Take this. Everyone a mystery of connections. In 1 pound of this glass, there are 11.5 ounces of silica sand from Vietnam, where sand is mined. As the stream flows down to Cam Ranh Bay carrying a handful less of that sand, the shape of the earth is disturbed by its absence. The sea turtle now has to breed 10 feet further away around a hidden bend. And what of the visitor walking on the beach 2 months later who fails to see the hatching eggs? A moment of thoughtful reflection lost. How are their lives changed by the glass?
Our hero draws attention to how the immediate presence of the wine glass in front of her points beyond itself to a gathering of disparate elements. The sand of the earth, the steam of the bay, the habitats of the turtles, the lives of the mortals. Our hero's account continues, tying in another element of the fourfold, sky.
And in this same glass, 2 ounces of soda ash to reduce the temperature at which the minerals blend, saving energy. But adding the soda gives off carbon dioxide, which microscopically heats the atmosphere and changes the growing season in Central America, so that the coffee plantations yield smaller harvests.
Our hero's account goes on to further highlight the deep web of connections between the earth, the sky, the divinities, and the mortals, contained within the appearance of a single wine glass.
Here it is. A gathering of inexhaustible stories. Did you know the word thing means a gathering? It contains memories of an unreachable past, of the ancestral dance of the earth and the elements, of the eternal play of light and darkness, of being, but always as a beyond being. It is near and far. It is an other.
Our hero concludes from this deep web of connections that there's something about the appearance of the wine glass that is always beyond, that always exceeds the meaning and purposes that I can attribute to it. It harbors a dimension of alterity in the distinctly Levinasian sense of the term.
Here, at this time, I'm a part of its story. But this glass doesn't need me to give it meaning. Touch it, but it cannot be possessed. This glass, this gathering, is a reality that is more complete than consciousness. What possible right do you have to say, now you're mine, Now you are a meagre thing, and now in my dominion I crush you.
In conclusion, Benso finds in Heidegger's account of letting beings be, of letting things be in their own most potentiality for being, a platform for thinking about the alterity of things, for thinking about a way of relating to a thing's autonomy, its thingly autonomy, without merely dominating it, without merely using it for our own exclusive purposes. The thing does not need us. It has its own, sometimes silent or muted story to tell, at least for those who have ears to hear it. This is a question that Benso takes deeply to heart. She asks herself, what are we supposed to do, ethically, in the face of thingly autonomy, of the fact that things, both of nature and of human artifice, have their own sense of freedom, autonomy? How might we honor that freedom? How might we cultivate it? What would a world in which those sort of interactions occurred look like? And it's these sorts of questions which Benso takes up in her The Face of Things, which we'll consider in our final lecture.